All right, so I hope everyone can see the screen. So understanding Saturn and remedies, this is the part two of the series of discussions that we are having every Saturday at 8 o'clock. All right. So in the first part of the class, we discussed about the esoteric secrets of Saturn, things which are not usually discussed in regular astrological conversations or astrological classes. So we'll be continuing with that, and from the next class, we will be actually going for the remedial part of Saturn. Okay, and participants can let me know if if you want me to discuss the secrets of Capricorn or the secrets of Aquarius. So if there is a confirmation that you want those things to be included in this class, then maybe we can include it. Okay, so that'll depend. That'll depend on what the participants want from here. All right, Doctor. Okay, so understanding Saturn and its remedies. Okay, so this is a question that Dr. Saab had raised in the very beginning, very beginning of the class, that the color of Saturn, right? The color of Saturn. So he asked the difference between, the question was, what is the color of Saturn? So the color of Saturn is actually black or dark blue in complexion. So when you say black, this is actually the dull black that we are speaking about. Okay, now no, it's it is well known that Saturn and Rahu are similar in nature because both of them represent Vayu Tattva. So even Rahu has black and blue in appearance. Rahu is black or blue in appearance, but the black of Rahu is flamboyant black. Okay, and the blue that you associate with Rahu is the color of the sky. The sky blue that you see normally, that is the blue color of Rahu. Okay, so Saturn, he has four arms in which he holds an arrow, a javelin, a bow, and bestows blessings with the fourth hand. Okay, he rides a vulture as a vahana. So this is this is common to every Vedic deity. Most of the Vedic deities, they have four arms or they have 10 arms. So Saturn, if you look at the iconography of Saturn, he'll have four arms in which he holds an arrow, a javelin, a bow, and with the fourth hand he is bestowing blessings on the devotee. That means whenever you see a deity with the mudra that is bestowing blessings, that means you can actually work with that deity. Okay, and the vahana of Saturn is vulture. Some people will say it is a crow, but actually it is a vulture. And I'll come to that point why it is a vulture and not a crow. Okay, it's a misconception that it is a crow, but actually it is a vulture. Okay, I'll come to it. Okay, so Shiva, Vishnu, Rama, and Krishna, who are considered very, very benevolent deities, also have the same dark blue complexion as Saturn. Okay, so this is actually known as Megh Shaman. Okay, the Sanskrit word is Megh Shaman. That means the dark blue that you see when the sky is overcast, right? So these deities that have mentioned, Shiva, Vishnu, Rama, and Krishna. So they also have the same dark blue complexion as Saturn. And why this forms the basis of remedies? Because most of the Saturn remedies that you will see will actually involve the worship of these four deities. Okay. So Shiva as Kala Bhairava, he is the guru of Saturn, of course. Vishnu again, he will rescue you from what if you are facing from if you are facing problems from Saturn, then Vishnu can rescue you. Rama, of course, he is a representation of the sun. He is a Vishnu avatara, which links to the sun. Okay, and Krishna, if Saturn is, if you have a moon Saturn conjunction, or maybe if transit Saturn is going over your natal moon, or if you're having a Saturn return, right? If you're having a Saturn return, then you can actually worship Krishna if you are facing Saturnine problems. Okay, Krishna is also worshipped if you have a second house Saturn, or if Saturn is transiting your second house. So that I'll explain more in details once we go to the remedial part. Okay. So the darkness that surrounds Saturn represents the denial of all attributes and existence beyond the planes of material manifestation, which cannot be expressed. So we all know that the Supreme Lord, okay, the Lord of the universe, who is unmanifest or who does not have a form. So that Lord of the universe is actually the Lord of the universe belongs to the domain of the unknowable. That is something we cannot know. Okay, We can, we can sing praises of the Lord all day we want, or we can, we can do rituals and remedies related to the Lord. But at one point of time, everything falls short of it, right? Everything falls short of it because the Lord represents something which is unknowable. Okay. So that unknowable is always dark because, as a child, why we feel afraid of the darkness? Because we do not know what lurks beyond that darkness, right? We are, as children, we have all been afraid of the dark places in the house, or maybe the dark alleys in the street. So we've all been afraid of darkness, right? But why is the mind afraid of darkness? Because beyond darkness there is nothing, isn't it? You cannot see what lies beyond that darkness. Beyond that darkness, there may lie a big treasure, or maybe there could be a danger to your life. So the mind, it becomes very alert, right? It becomes very alert when it encounters darkness, and that alertness actually forms the basis of fear, because as human beings, our brain is almost 98% reptilian. It has not developed much beyond that, right? So we are still operating in a flight or fight mode. So that is the reason why, why the brain is very afraid of darkness. So the darkness that surrounds Saturn represents the denial of all attributes. That means Saturn, in this case, whenever you see the dark complexion of Saturn, either as black or blue, you can say that you are watching, you are watching a very formless form of the divine. Okay, Nirguna. The word, Sanskrit word is Nirguna, right? So absence of objectification or externalization is regarded in popular conception as darkness. So as I explained, you cannot see anything that, you can, if it is pitch dark, right? If it is pitch dark, of course, you are not afraid when your room is dark, but you will be very afraid if I ask you to, to go from one end of the street to the other, where it is very pitch dark, where you cannot see beyond, whatever lies beyond the darkness. So what is dark? The mother's womb is dark. The unknown, the timeless, the future, and eternity are all considered to be dark. So these are the things where we cannot see through, isn't it? So if I ask you to do something unknown, that means all of a sudden your brain will go into darkness because you do not know what lies beyond it, right? The future in eternity. So the future is something that we cannot see. Okay, that is the reason we need a Jyotish. Jyotish means you're throwing light on the darkness. And eternity means you cannot know what will happen in the next 100 years. And we all human beings have a limitation. We don't even know what will happen the next moment, right? So right now you are listening to this lecture, and I'm teaching something. The next moment I may fall down dead, or maybe someone of you might have might experience a sudden cramp in the leg. It's all hidden in the womb of darkness. And then mother's womb is also dark, right? The mother's womb is also dark. That is the reason, the baby cries all of a sudden, because all of a sudden he encounters that light. Okay, he encounters that light. And this is also one reason, why most people, they don't recommend the worship of Ugra Devatas, like Kali or like Narasimha, because these deities, all of a sudden they will suddenly bring you to light from the darkness. The Ugra Devatas, they are very, they are very fierce. They are very fast to act upon your requests, and to achieve your requests, they can go to any end, right? So if you're living in darkness, if you're living in denial, if you're living in the fear of the unknown, all of a sudden those deities, they will show you the light. And that light can be very uncomfortable, not only for the physical eyes, but also for the soul who gets used to the darkness. If someone has lived in a dark room for maybe 10 to 20 years, and then all of a sudden you bring that person out in the light, that person will feel something very, very different about him, not only externally but internally as well. Okay, so this darkness is in fact dark blue, for it contains all colors. So this darkness that you attribute to Saturn, or that dark blue color of Saturn, is actually a mixture or amalgamation of all colors. It is the ultimate from which there is no reaction. So from darkness there is nothing, right? Beyond darkness there is nothing, no reaction. So we all have heard, this common Advaita teaching that there is no God. Okay, if you travel to the end of the Vedas, which is known as Vedanta, which is Advaita, anyone who has studied Vedanta will say that there is no God. Why? Because there is no reaction. There is nothing but God. Okay, there is a saying in the Quran which says, there is no God but God. What does that mean? It means that there is only the ultimate. There is nothing beyond it. We are all a part of that ultimate super soul, or whatever you want to call it, because that thing cannot be named, isn't it? That thing cannot be named. The God that we all worship, that God is something that we are naming as Vishnu, or maybe as Shiva, or maybe as Krishna, or anything like that. So the ultimate God, or the ultimate being, or the super soul, there is no name for it, isn't it? Yes, and this naming is something that that can be attributed to the development of science and technology. We all try to name something, to attribute characteristics to that thing, right? We say that we get wet in the rain, but what makes us wet? That is something we do not know. Rainwater does not make us wet. Something that makes us wet is only named as rainwater. Other than that, we cannot know what actually makes us wet. So this is a limitation that we human beings have. All right. So every form of manifestation on its final merging with the ultimate mingles in this dark blue. So in the end, whenever there is utter destruction, or pralaya, or the dance of Shiva, okay, the dance of Shiva, where the universe is coming to an end, right? So everything mingles in this dark blue, right? So all colors represent different kinds of reactions that arise in the realm of manifestation. Okay, so in the realm of manifestation, that means in the realm of creation, when we come to the realm of creation, you see light is white, right? And that white light can be broken down into 7 colors, the Victor spectrum that we have all learned, right? Violet, indigo, blue, gray, no, sorry, green, yellow, orange, and red. So that is the electromagnetic spectrum that we are speaking about. But beyond it lies that ultimate darkness. Okay, so beyond that realm of manifestation, there is neither color nor reaction. So if there is if there is nothing to see, okay, if there is nothing to if there is nothing to see, if there is nothing to do, then that is the state of God, right? That is the realm of God. The nature of this reactionless, colorless state of existence is bliss. Perfect poise and rest without any anxiety and hesitation can be experienced in that blissful depth of the ultimate. So, we have seen people meditating for years, right? But then if we ask any meditator, can you stop your thought even for a minute? It will be very difficult for that person who has meditated, say, even for 10 to 15 years. If for that person, it will still be difficult to stop his or her thoughts. So what happens? Stopping thought means you are actually entering a state of reactionless, colorless bliss, right? And this bliss is something, this bliss is something that is the end goal of the Vedanta, which we call it as Vedanta. Okay, this bliss is something which we call it as Vedanta, right? All right. Okay, so you must have heard some prominent speakers of Advaita, like Ramana Maharishi, or maybe Nisargadatta Maharaj. What Nisargadatta Maharaj says is that if you look at the world disappears. This is a common teaching that can be attributed to Nisargadatta Maharaj, right? So what does it mean? What does he mean by disappearing? By disappearing, he means that if you look at your thoughts, he says you look at your world and it disappears. So by world, he means thoughts, because the world around you is actually made up of your thoughts. If you close your eyes, all you see is darkness, right? So there is no world if you close your eyes. So at the end of the day, what happens? The world that you are experiencing is nothing but a product of thought, isn't it? Even the God that you are experiencing, right? We all say that, okay, Shiva has this form, or Krishna has this form, or maybe the Devi has this form. But at the end of the day, it is only a thought that we are holding. That Shiva has a garland wears a snake as a garland, or maybe smears plasma all over his body, or the Devi rides a tiger. So it's a thought that we are having. Somebody has implanted it. But at the end of the day, we do not know how the unknown looks like. How does God look like? So the realm of God is actually the realm of unknown, and that realm is the realm of bliss, where nothing exists. Okay, so pure harmony prevails there, social status, distinction, class consciousness, and all discriminatory ideas are completely absent. So these things, social status, distinction, class consciousness, and other discriminatory ideas, these are all a byproduct of your thought, isn't it? You know, when you were born without these distinctions, right? You did not know whether you were rich or poor. You did not know whether you belonged to a lower class or a middle class or maybe the elite class, right? You did not know whether you were a boy or a girl. So all these distinctions came in after your, your mind started processing things, and from that process, and from those processed things, thoughts got generated, right? So in the world of, in the world of God, or in the state of bliss, there is absolute pure harmony. There is no disturbance, right? You can just imagine, you can imagine bliss as a pond that is just there, right? The water is just there without being disturbed, and all of a sudden, if you throw a stone into that water, what happens? Thoughts are produced. So those ripple effects that you see when when you throw a when you throw a stone in a perfectly still pond, that ripple effect can be considered to be your thoughts, right? And and the pure water without disturbance, that can be considered as your mind, right? So in the state of pure harmony, all distinctions that are created by our thoughts, they do not exist. They are completely absent. So, however, attainment of this everlasting harmony is a very disturbing process. Why is it disturbing? Because to achieve that everlasting harmony, to achieve that everlasting peace, we have to constantly unlearn whatever we have learned since the day we were born in this world, right? So the education system, right, the atmosphere at home, the atmosphere outside, everyone or everything has been responsible, for our for our inability to perceive life as it is, because we are, we are filled with opinions, and those opinions, out of the opinions that we have within ourselves, 90% of those opinions are not our opinions. They are something that we have picked up, maybe from our parents, maybe from our teachers, or maybe from the world around us. But whatever opinions we have, those are all learned from the external environment. Okay, those are learned from the people we communicate or we interact with, right? So whatever it is, this everlasting harmony can be, can be achieved or can be attained only when we unlearn all that we have learned, and this can be very, very difficult. Okay, so it takes away all that is known, all that has been accumulated, and all that can be perceived. So what Saturn does, Saturn actually is fond of breaking down your ego. So what the ego thinks is that it knows everything, right? It can hoard resources, it can hoard money. How much bank balance do I have? Or how many books have I bought, right? How many publications do I have? What is the money that I'll be accumulating till the end of my life? So these are all calculations that we make in the mind. And what Saturn does is that he destroys everything that is known. He destroys everything that you have accumulated, right? Even your identity is an accumulated identity. Your personality is an accumulated personality. So everything is taken away by Saturn. Okay. So the different kinds of attributes with which one is associated during the eons of incarnations are completely dissolved in this realm of darkness without any hope of their retrieval. So we have been incarnating for, for we don't know how many years, and with each incarnation we have taken on different attributes, we have taken on different personalities, we have done karmas that not only have influenced our next births but also all the subsequent births we have taken. So what Saturn does is that he takes away all the attributes that have been associated during the eons of incarnations. So one thing is for sure, whenever you incarnate, or whatever attributes or whatever personality you have during those incarnations, the mind may forget. Okay, the mind may forget, but the body is fully aware of those incarnations, right? The mind is very new. The mind is something that we get for this, we have gotten for this particular birth, right? For this particular lifetime. But we have been, we have been carrying this body since decades or since centuries, whatever it is. So Saturn takes away everything that you have learned, everything that you have accumulated, everything that your senses can perceive. And because he takes away, it's a very painful process of, it is a very painful process of unlearning. It's a very painful process of, achieving everlasting harmony. Okay. and there is no hope for the retrieval. So you can be sure that if something has gone away due to, due to Saturn's effect during its dasha, or during its, during its mahadasha, Vimshottari mahadasha specifically, or maybe Vimshottari antardasha, there is very little hope of their retrieval, because Saturn will always take away whatever is not essential or whatever is not necessary for you. Okay. So this state of nothingness is psychologically very disturbing. It resembles what Jesus felt on the cross. So what happens if you are being crucified? The when you are feeling a lot of pain in the body, what happens? We have all experienced pain, isn't it? As a child, or maybe suppose whenever we have had an accident, a very nasty accident for that reason, what happens? We have felt a lot of pain, and in that case, what happens? The mind stops responding, right? The mind stops its chattering. The entire focus comes on that pain. So that is a very disturbing effect psychologically. Okay, that is a very disturbing effect psychologically. And maybe we can actually have a, we can actually have a meditation session where I can teach you how to experience the state of nothingness. Okay, you may be a meditator who have been meditating for maybe 10 years or 20 years, or you may be absolutely having no idea about meditation, but I guarantee that whatever teachings, whatever I teach, that will help you to achieve that state of nothingness in maybe 5 to 10 minutes. That is my guarantee. So maybe if we have the time, we can have a class on that. Nevertheless, so it is like that. The painful experience of renouncing everything that we associate with the living makes us compare Saturn with death. So why Saturn is compared with death? Why Saturn? Why the Dushthanas of the horoscope have Saturnian energy? Because that painful experience of renouncing everything that we associate with living, right? Whenever we renounce everything that we associate with the living, we actually compare Saturn with, it actually gives a death-like pain. Okay, it actually gives death-like pain. Okay, so the dark blue complexion represents the death-like situation, which is the great illusion that surrounds everything. Okay, so we are living in this world of Maya. Okay, we are living in a very temporary world, and in the Bhagavad Gita, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna calls this world as Dukhalaya. Why Dukhalaya? Because this is an abode of misery. Why misery? Because we can know for sure that there is nothing permanent in this world. Okay, there is nothing permanent in this world. Everything is an illusion, and when that illusion breaks, it creates a death-like situation for the native, right? So it is the mighty ignorance which arises from one's separation from reality. So what happens is that our ego makes us think that we are separate from each, from each other. Okay, our ego makes us see that we are unique, but at the end of the day, when you realize that we are all connected, okay, that there is no separation, the separation happens only at the level of the mind, then that would actually give you a proper understanding of reality. Okay, so Saturn is not darkness and does not really reside within darkness. It is beyond darkness, beyond illusion and ignorance. So Saturn, people attribute darkness to Saturn, but it is actually beyond darkness, beyond illusion and ignorance. I'll show you why. So when the light of Saturn reaches the mortal individual, it actually comes through the veil of ignorance. So what happens is that we had discussed about the, about the 7 rays of sun. Okay, so we had also discussed that the 7 rays of Saturn are similar to the 7 rays of the sun. But what makes the 7 rays of Saturn different is that it comes through the veil of ignorance. Okay, so you will see the light, after a lot of ignorance. Okay, Saturn keeps you away from looking at the real situation, or Saturn keeps you away from from experiencing wisdom by keeping you in ignorance. Okay, so the wheel of shadow creates difficulties in comprehending the true nature of Saturn. It creates confusion, obscurity, and the feeling of isolation. So what happens is that if you try to understand the true nature of Saturn, confusion, obscurity, and the feeling of isolation is something that will come as a byproduct. Okay, that will come as a byproduct. Because why? Because Saturn is actually operating through the wheel of ignorance or through the wheel of shadow. So the trials arising from the experience of great loneliness that Saturn brings are like surgical operations meant to end the ailment of attachment to the material world. There is inevitable pain. So what happens when you have cancer? The doctor actually advises you to remove that cancerous part from the body, and then you either go for maybe chemotherapy or you go for an operation. So what happens is that it is guaranteed that after the operation, your cancer will heal. So similarly, the ailment, the issue of attachment to the material world can be considered to be a great ailment, and like a surgical doctor, Saturn actually cuts away all the attachments that we have with the material world. And the result is that there is inevitable pain, because we usually tend to lose whatever we value the most in this world. Okay. So whenever the individual is weaned from its long-lasting attachment, he feels pain. Often the heart beats. So what happens is that Saturn takes away all your, all your attachments that you have. Maybe you want a new bike, or maybe you want a new car, or maybe you want to take a holiday. So what happens is that we actually get attached to our wants. We get attached to our needs. So Saturn takes away those, those long-lasting attachments. And when those attachments are taken away, what happens is that there is a lot of pain for the individual. The heart beats. So, however, with this inevitable process, there can be no clarity of vision and true rendering of the layers of illusion which blind the individual. So, as individuals, we are all blinded by the play of Maya or Prakriti, isn't it? So, as a result, when there is a clarity of vision, there is a lot of struggle. There is a lot of resistance from the individual. Okay, why? Because once the layers of illusion are broken, then the mind also dies at that moment. Okay, once the layers of illusion are broken, the mind also dies, because now you can actually see clearly what is happening in this world and what is not happening in this world. Okay, so the dark rays emitted from Saturn inevitably draw the individual to the path of realization of truth, and pain is a necessary part of this influence. So every time you are undergoing a Saturn period, right? Every time you are undergoing a Saturn dasha or a Saturn antardasha, the bhukti of Saturn, what happens is that you have to, or you must understand that whatever Saturn is doing to you, he is actually polishing you. Okay, he is actually polishing you, and whenever you are polished against the rocks, pain will always be an inevitable companion. Okay. So Saturn is therefore the most dreaded, although it is not the greatest malefic. So I have explained it to you why Saturn is not the greatest malefic, but it is the most dreaded. Okay, it is the most dreaded because what happens is that Saturn creates problems not only by sitting wherever it sits in the horoscope, it also creates problems by its aspects. Okay, it also creates problems by its aspects, right? So what does the third aspect of Saturn mean? The third aspect of the Saturn means the most challenging area of your life where you need to grow on your own. That is the most, that is the most challenging aspect of Saturn, the third aspect. What is the seventh aspect of Saturn? The seventh aspect is the desire of Saturn. Okay, this is the place where, where Saturn wants you to struggle. Okay, where Saturn wants you to do your hard work and then come out of it, right? And then the ninth aspect of Saturn, the 10th aspect of Saturn is your failure. Okay, so Saturn helps you forget. So you must forget the affairs, or you must forget the significations, rather some of the significations of the house where Saturn puts his 10 aspect, because that is an area where you will obviously and most certainly fail, no matter how many remedies you do, or no matter what you do to rectify your birth chart. Okay. So this fear is accentuated because Saturn leaves the individual with nothing to hold on to and feel secure. So Saturn, what he does is that he takes away your feeling of security, your feeling of comfort. Okay, he leaves nothing for you to hold on, and this fear is actually accentuated. Okay, so the dark blue complexion of Saturn represents its true nature as the ultimate in the most objective aspect. There is nothing beyond it. So what Saturn is telling you is that you have to, before I take you in my grace, you have to give up everything. Okay, you have to give up everything, and there is nothing beyond it. There is nothing that you can do once you actually encounter Saturn in its best or in its worst form. All right. So I'll take a 5 minutes break, and then I'll see how Saturn is actually fulfilling his agenda by his instruments. Just pausing the recording for a while. All right. So Saturn executes his agenda by his invincible instruments of the arrow, javelin, and bow. These are special instruments of attack. So what Saturn is doing is that the three instruments that he holds in his three arms, the arrow, javelin, and bow. So these three instruments he is using to attack. What is he attacking? He is attacking the ego. Okay, he is attacking the ego, right? So the arrow, Saturn shoots his arrow at the victim to relieve him of karmic debts that fetter him on the path of enlightenment. So he's using the bow to shoot the arrow, of course. So what his arrow is doing is that it is cutting off all the karmic attachments that fetter the native on the path of enlightenment. That means, and on the path of enlightenment, that means whatever is keeping away the native from achieving enlightenment, Saturn shoots those things away with his arrow. Okay, so it is done in order to enable him to effectively approach the ultimate. The arrow is also the aspiration by which one can rise to one's higher self. So Saturn's arrow here is actually doing two jobs. One, that arrow is actually cutting, no? The arrow is actually cutting the karmic knots of the individual, and the arrow is also giving the individual an aspiration by which one can rise to one's higher self, or one can understand or realize one's higher nature. The arrow shot by Saturn creates psychological turmoil and churns the psyche so that the hidden problems and potentials are externalized and the reality is known. So obviously, whatever Saturn does, that will actually cause the psychological turmoil, and this is something that will be experienced by everyone who is about to enter the Sarisati period, okay, or about to enter the Kantakshani period, right? So Sarisati happens when Saturn reaches the 12th house from your natal moon. Okay, so that is a tumultuous period for 7.5 years. Similarly, whenever Saturn transits the 8th house or the 4th house from your ascendant, that is a period of Kantakshani. Yes, that is a period of Kantakshani. So obviously these periods are a source of psychological turmoil. But the psychological turmoil actually starts much before it, because Saturn by then shoots the arrow to cut off all your karmic knots. Okay, so and churns the psyche so that hidden problems and potentials are externalized. Okay, so Saturn all of a sudden he brings to your notice the problems that you have been avoiding, and reality is known. Okay, so this is something that when people are experiencing sadisati, what happens is, what if a person has both Kantak and Sadasati at the same time? Yes, it can be very, very troubling. Okay, it can be very, very psychologically, it can be very, very damaging. Okay, and the reality is known. So what happens is that all of a sudden the real nature of people will be revealed to you. People will actually come out from the woodwork to cause you harm. Okay, if suppose you are very meditative. Okay, you are very meditative. You have been doing a lot of puja. You have been doing a lot of upasana much before Sati started, and then Saturn sees that. Okay, Saturn sees that, but still he will actually start influencing the people around you to give you trouble. Okay, Saturn not only influences your psychological conditioning, he will also impact the people around you to give you terrible results. Okay, so having perceived the hidden nature of oneself, one often gets bewildered, but in the long run the perception of one's inner weakness arouses a deeper sense of spirituality. So this is true for everyone. Yes, once you accept once you accept your weaknesses, right? Once you accept your weaknesses, once you accept that, okay, this is my weakness and this is something I have to work on, what happens is that you have a stronger conviction. Okay, you have a stronger conviction to fight against your circumstances. So Saturn bears everything before you. Okay, Saturn shows you the reality that causes the psychological churn to happen. This spiritual perception of oneself provides the motivating force towards the ultimate reality. So at the end of the day, what happens is that it actually pushes you to reach your ultimate nature. And there can be no spirituality without suffering. This is true, as I had mentioned in the last class. This is true for all the, for all the big spiritualists that you encounter, whether he is coming from any place in India or across the world. A happy man cannot be spiritual. Okay, a happy man cannot be spiritual. You have to suffer, okay, so that you become spiritual. And once you become spiritual, then real happiness begins. Okay. So Saturn's arrow rends the veil of ignorance, uncovers the hidden self, externalizes the inherent evil as well as beneficial potential, and gives an insight into the true nature of the self. So to understand what the self really is, you have to first understand yourself, and that is what Saturn does to you. It brings out every negative thing that was hidden in your personality, every negative aspect that was there in your personality, which you previously ignored or which you thought would go away on ignoring. Everything is brought out to the surface, and that can be very unsettling for that person. Okay. So although Saturn shoots the arrow towards the victim as the archer, he may be invisible and may remain elusive like a thief. So an arrow can be shot from anywhere, isn't it? When Krishna was killed by Jara, the hunter, that arrow came from nowhere. Krishna was sleeping, and that arrow came from nowhere, and it pierced the soles of his feet and it poisoned him. So similarly, Saturn can shoot an arrow from anywhere. Okay, whatever psychological problems that Saturn is causing, okay, whatever psychological problems that Saturn is causing to you, those problems, you may never, you may never reach the source of those problems. You may never think that those problems are being created or being caused by Saturn. So in most cases, if Saturn is shooting the arrow, he may be invisible and may remain elusive like a thief. And this happens mainly when Saturn is in Martian signs. Okay, whenever Saturn goes into Aries, of course, we know that Saturn debiliates in Aries, or whenever Saturn goes into Scorpio, right? So Saturn shoots an arrow and remains hidden from, from the native, just like a thief, right? Because anytime a Saturn goes into Martian sign, it is a very hostile Saturn that you are encountering. Okay, just remember the words, a very hostile Saturn that you are encountering. Okay, and this is one of the combinations for Daridra Yoga. Okay, Saturn into Martian sign, especially in Navamsha, it's a very prominent condition for Daridra Yoga. So it is not immediately known how or from whom the assault has come, but the individual suffers the pain and is psychologically disturbed, even though he may not be aware of the direction from which the arrow was fired. Yes, Daridra Yoga. It is Daridra Yoga. So what happens is that if Saturn fires the arrow and does not reveal himself, right, the psyche is disturbed. But then the individual may actually not find out the source of his trouble. Okay. Transit of Saturn seen from the moon sign or ascendant or both. All transits are, this is for everyone. All transits are always seen from the moon. Okay, all transits are seen from the moon, but the effects are seen from the ascendant. Okay, the physical effects are seen on the ascendant, and for Kantak Shani, it is always physical. Okay, Kantak means what? Kantak means thorn, right? Kantak means thorn. So whenever Saturn transits the 4th from your ascendant or the 8th from your ascendant, it will seem as if a thorn is stuck in your body and you are finding it very difficult to remove it because of the pain. Okay. So to pinpoint the source of trouble created by Saturn is difficult. It is especially so when deep pain is inflicted. So this is very, very true. What happens is sometimes this. I know this has been experienced by everyone. Suppose you have gone for some tests in the hospital. Okay, suppose someone is suffering from some problem and you have gone for a test. Suppose there is a kidney problem for that person, right? And if you go for that test, what happens is that all the parameters of the body will show some problem. Okay, suppose there is a problem in the kidneys, and when you initially test, right, when you initially do the testing, all parameters of the body will actually show some issue. But then when the doctor, if the doctor can diagnose it and say that this is a kidney problem and you need to do this, you need to do that, and then you start working on your kidneys, and maybe after 3 months or maybe after a year, when you test, you will see that along with the kidneys, the other parameters have also become normal. So what happens? It means to show that whenever there is deep pain in one part of the body, the entire body is affected. When there is deep pain in one part of the psyche, the entire psyche gets affected, and that makes it very, very difficult, to pinpoint the source of trouble. Okay. Now we come to the javelin. So the javelin is a kind of dart which pierces its victim and kills him. So this is when Saturn acts as the maraka. Okay, the javelin is something that Saturn throws at you when he rules the 8th house or the 11th house. Okay. Whenever Saturn is ruling the 8th house or the 11th house of the horoscope, Saturn will throw the javelin. Okay, because the 8th house is the house of death. That is a maraka house. Okay. Now that is not seen from the 8th house, right? That is not seen from the 8th house. Don't think that that if anyone who has who has Saturn in the ruling the 8th house, Saturn dasha will be your death. No, that is not seen from the 8th house. That is an entirely different calculation that we have to do. So the difference between an arrow and javelin lies at the contact point, obviously, right? You can shoot an arrow from a long distance, but obviously, if you have to hit someone with a javelin, you have to come before the victim and then hit it, right? How to see that, Prashant? I'll not diverge on that topic. Maybe we can have a very special class on how I can tell you to how to calculate that. Because what happens is when you teach someone how to see that, then the first chart that you will look at, that is the thing that your mind will focus on. Okay, how the death is happening, right? I'll not teach that, but one thing is for sure, it is not the house of death, neither is the second, nor is the seventh. Okay, that is seen very, very differently. That is calculated very differently. People think that if you're running your second Lord Dasha or the seventh Lord Dasha or the eighth Lord Dasha, you will actually see that no, that is a very different perception of that. Okay, that is not calculated in that way. Because there is a lot of misconception regarding that. Anyways, so the arrow may be shot by remaining hidden from view, but in the case of the javelin, the assailant, that is Saturn, is in close contact with the victim. So as I said, the arrow can be shot from a distance. But what happens is that if Saturn is aiming the javelin, then he will aim in front of, he will aim by standing in front of you, or maybe by standing behind your back. That means Saturn has to be in very close contact with you. Okay. Now Saturn is not afraid of its victim, right? Because Saturn is regarded as Saturn. The Brahat Parashara Hora Shastra says that Saturn is a very it's a very it's a planet with a very small heart. Okay, it gets afraid very easily. But no, Saturn is not afraid of its victim. Okay, it does not always remain hidden or elusive like a thief. Now, why Parashara says that and why I am saying this, is there a conflict of opinion? No, there is no conflict of opinion. But Parashara says that if if a Saturn rule person, okay, a Saturn rule person may be very, very, maybe may have very, very less courage. Okay, that is what Parashara is saying. And I kind of agree with him. Why? Because what are the Saturn rule signs? So Saturn rule signs are Capricorn and Aquarius. So courage is always seen from which house? It is seen from the third house. So for Capricorn, what is the third house? For Capricorn, the third house is ruled by Guru. So, you are having a very gentle planet ruling the third house. So obviously that person may get very easily afraid, right? So that is how it is seen. Okay, that is how it is seen. What if Saturn is retrograde, Capricorn ascendant? So retrograde is a very different topic. Okay, for now, what I'll say is that if a planet is retrograde, always see its result manifesting from the 7th house from itself. Okay, suppose Saturn is retrograde in Capricorn, then it will behave as if it is in Cancer. Saturn is retrograde in Sagittarius, then it will behave as if it is in Gemini. That is the general rule to study retrograde planet. And I'm planning to hold a session on retrogression as well as combustion. Maybe we can discuss more on this, on how each planet behaves when it is retrograde. So Saturn is not afraid of its victim. It does not always remain hidden or elusive like a thief. Okay. So for Aquarius, third house is Mars ruling. Yes, but the third house is what? The third house is Aries, right? So what is the animal of Aries? The animal of Aries is a goat. So if you just shoo a goat away, that goat will easily run, right? The goat is not, the goat is not a bull which will hit you back. The bull of Taurus. Okay. So that is why Parashara says that Saturn, Saturn is a very fearful planet. Okay, but what he means is that the ascendants ruled by Saturn, they do not possess much courage. They will easily run away if challenged. Okay. All right. Sometimes the impact of Saturn is clearly identifiable. Disease, injury, untimely loss of support, and status in the society are the short and quick actions represented by the javelin in his hand. So all these things that manifest, like disease, injury, untimely loss of support, and status in the society, they are, they are caused when Saturn throws the javelin at you. All right. So the bow represents the psychological foundation made by Saturn. I'm just mistaken the spelling. For the spiritual unfoldment of the individual. The bow is the base from which the missile is shot. The missile is the arrow here. Okay. So much inner and outer reorientation is imperative for the growth and blossoming of spiritual consciousness. So if you have to grow spiritually, there has to be a radical reorientation in your inner as well as outer conditioning. Okay. So the divine aspiration represented by the arrow can succeed only on a carefully prepared foundation. And this is very, very important to understand. Okay, so whatever aspirations you have, okay, whatever divine aspirations you have, if you want to reach the divine, you have to maintain, you have to maintain a very sattvic lifestyle. You have to control your food habits. You have to control your mouth. You have to control whatever you are watching on a daily basis. Okay, so that is a foundation that you are lying, right? Only on that foundation, only when you have cleaned the body sufficiently, only when you have only when you have cleaned the conscience sufficiently, only then the divine aspiration can manifest, right? So Saturn is the most spiritualizing planet in the sense that it effectively prepares its students for inner awakening. So whatever trials and tribulations that Saturn is making you go through, that is actually an effective preparation for inner awakening. Saturn gives so much trouble with regards to material things that at the end of the day, what happens is you finally have a repulsion for materialism. Okay, and in that sense, Saturn is the most spiritualizing planet. Often this means denial of all material comfort. So there is so much of denial, right? There is so much of denial that at the end of the day you feel that giving up is an easier option. Okay, and that indicates the start of your spiritual nature. That indicates the unfolding of your spirituality. However, sometimes by granting the conveniences of life and freeing the individual from mundane care and anxieties, Saturn enables the individual to explore the deeper levels of his nature. So this usually happens when Saturn is the Yoga Karaka. Okay, if Saturn is the Yoga Karaka, right? If Saturn is the Yoga Karaka and is placed in Kendra or Trikona, this is a very important condition to understand. If Saturn is the Yoga Karaka, he better not be placed in the Dusthana. Okay, because then Saturn will behave as a very normal Saturn. But if Saturn is a Yoga Karaka and he is placed in a Kendra or a Trikona, then he actually can free you from mundane care and anxieties. Okay, and once that happens, you are prepared to explore the deeper levels of your nature. So surgical skill, expertise in medicinal herbs. Saturn in sixth house, it is good because Saturn actually likes routine. Saturn likes routine jobs, and sixth house is all about your routine life. So if a planet is there which loves routine in a house that represents routine, it is good, but it can make you a dictator at work. Okay, it can give you an attitude like my way or the highway. Okay, so that is a good thing, and it can be a bad thing. Even in enemy sign, yes, even in enemy sign, suppose Saturn is in Aries or Saturn is in Scorpio, or maybe Saturn is in Leo. In that case also, it can make you a Hitler, but you will be a very bad Hitler. You will be a bully at work. Okay, you will be a bully at work. People will be afraid to work under you, but you will know how to make people work. Okay. So surgical skill, expertise in medicinal herbs for healing complicated ailments, as well as insight into divine mysteries are produced by Saturn. So it is a common misconception that Mars or K2 is represent for surgical skills. Okay, but it is not the case, right? Expertise in medicinal herbs for healing complicated ailments, as well as insight into divine mysteries, these are all under the domain of Saturn. Yes, Mars represents surgery. Okay, Dr. Sir, Mars represents surgery, but that skill to operate, to operate that blade, that comes from Saturn, because you need to have a lot of patience. You cannot just go and you cannot just go and move the blade in whatever direction you want, isn't it? You have to be very, very precise. You have to be very, very, you need to have very, very soft hands to operate that blade. So surgery is of course Mars, but surgical skill is Saturn. Okay. So Saturn is more concerned with the long-term welfare of the individual rather than short-term affiliation. It ensures that the eradication of material attachment is lasting. So what happens is that Saturn will give you so much troubles with regards to material things that at the end of the day you will feel that let it go, jane do. Okay, this is the feeling once you are hit tremendously, if you are hit very terribly by Saturn, that jane do will be a very common word that you will be using. And that is something that everyone who has experienced Sadhasati recently will understand. Okay, so after Sadhasati and before Sadhasati, life will be 180 degrees different. All right. So Saturn pushes the native in that direction so that his own onward journey is made possible and becomes unavoidable. So Saturn brings you to a condition where your journey is unavoidable. Okay, where your spiritual journey, where your journey towards your spirituality is unavoidable. Saturn will bring you to that situation. So even if the individual is not aware of the necessary adjustments made in his psyche, it does not matter for Saturn as long as it has prepared a strong foundation from which sliding back is different. So whenever Saturn, this happens, this preparation of foundation actually happens when Saturn and Jupiter will be conjunct. Okay, so this happens for every 30 years, isn't it? Saturn and Jupiter will be conjunct, will be together every 30 years. So when they come together, they will actually prepare a strong foundation from which sliding back is difficult. That means, and this is true, this must be true for everyone who is actually attending this class. Since the last year when Saturn and Jupiter came together, whatever you were before that, whatever you were doing before that, or whatever your perception was before Saturn and Jupiter came back, you'll no longer have that same perception. That perception is something that you have had to let go forever. Okay, so whatever foundations are being built by Saturn, sliding back is always difficult. It's almost impossible. That means you cannot escape that prison of Saturn, that prison which Saturn puts you in. Okay. So confidence in Saturn and surrender to him are the most effective means of securing his benediction. So this is the most easiest remedy. Okay. People try out various remedies to please the planet. People try out different pujas or tantras or yantras. But at the end of the day, if you have confidence that, okay, Saturn is taking me in a direction which I don't know, and it's perfectly okay, isn't it? As human beings, one of the most difficult things to accept is the fact that you may not know something. Okay, as human beings, you may not know something. So as a result, what happens is that we become very, very disturbed. Okay, if we don't know something, we can become very, very disturbed. So when we don't know something, in that case, what happens is that the easiest way for us is that we have to let go, and we should let go. Okay, it's okay if you don't know something, isn't it? You may know that thing after a period of a few days, or maybe a few months, or maybe a few years. It's absolutely fine if you don't know anything at the present moment. It's absolutely fine if something is not, if something is not discernible to you at the present moment, and surrendering to him. So this is the most difficult thing for a human being, because we human beings have an illusion that we are under free will. Okay, we human beings have an illusion that there is some free will. Of course there is some free will that depends on the strength of your 3, 6, 10th and 11th houses, but then free will is not seen in that way. People think that if your 3rd, 6th, 10th and 11th houses are strong, you have free will. No, free will is seen in a completely different way. Maybe I'll have a video on how to see free will. Okay. So Saturn is ready to bestow blessings even during periods of arduous preparations and unbearable pain. So even when you have, when you are going through unbearable pain that is brought about by Shani Maharaj, if you are ready to accept whatever is happening, all of a sudden Saturn starts bestowing his blessings. So even this cold and dry planet can be pacified. Okay, it can be remedied, right? But of course, remedies for Saturn will take almost a year to show results. Okay, people think that, oh my god, I have come to the best of astrologer for a consultation, and he is giving me remedies and the remedy will work tomorrow. No, it will not happen that way. You need to have patience with Saturn, and that is something Saturn is trying to teach you. Saturn is trying to teach you patience, and that patience should be, should be exhibited even while doing remedies. Okay. By reposing confidence in the benevolence of the deity and surrendering oneself to the will of the planet, much pain is relieved and the unfoldment process is quickened. So this is something that Saturn does once once you accept what is happening. Okay, once you accept what is happening, whatever Saturn is trying to do through you, that process is quickened. Inference: the key to making a Saturnine period less painful is to accept, let go, and surrender. So these are the three important keywords. If you are going for a harsh Saturn period, these are the keywords you need to remember. Okay, accept, that means accept your situation, let go, and surrender. So by being accepting, I am not saying you become fatalistic. Okay, this is a very different, acceptance is a very different word from fatalistic. Fatalistic means that you have submitted yourself to fate. Okay, acceptance means you have accepted the situation as it is, and now you are willing to work for the better. Okay, there's a very subtle difference between acceptance and fatalism. People think that once you have accepted something, you have resigned to your fate. No, not at all. Accepting means you are not struggling against the situation. You have accepted what the situation is right now. Suppose you have lost a leg in an accident, right? So by being fatalistic, you will see that, okay, fate has made me lost a leg. Now I'll be sleeping on my bed all day long, and I don't know where my next meal will come from. I don't know what I will do in my life. That is something which is known as fatalistic. What acceptance means is that you have accepted the situation. Okay, I've lost a leg. Now let me see how I can make my life better. Okay, that is the meaning of acceptance, right? Then letting go. Okay, letting go. What do you mean by letting go? Letting go means trusting in the process. Okay, this is something that people need to understand how to let go, because not letting go is one of the primary reasons why your prayers don't fructify, why the deities will not work for you, because you are not letting go. Suppose you are undertaking a journey from Mumbai to Kashmir, and you don't know how to drive, right? So you're sitting in the bus or sitting in a train, and then you are going. So what you are doing, you are letting go. You are allowing the driver to take you from one point to your destination, right? So that is letting go. Yes. But then what happens, as human beings, we have a habit of keeping on, we have a habit of keeping a tab on our, on our work, right? Suppose you are doing a mantra. You'll always see, okay, I've done 4 days of the mantra, maybe something has changed. I have done 10 days of the mantra, maybe something has changed. Oh my God, I have done 90 days of the mantra, nothing has changed. What has happened? So that is not letting go. That means you are not respecting the deity. You are not respecting the will of the deity to bring you things. And that is the reason why prayers fail for 90% of the people. You are praying and you are still worrying. If you are praying and worrying, that means you have a problem. Okay. If you are praying, what happens? You are surrendering your problems to God. And now let God decide what he or she needs to do with you, isn't it? So that is letting go. You let go when you were in your mother's womb, isn't it? You let go of that process for either 7 or 9 months. If you were premature, you were born in the 7th month, right? If you had a C-section or maybe a normal delivery, you were born in the 9th month. So at that point, you were very good at letting go. You did not know how you will come out. You did not know, how childhood would be. You started getting attached only when your thinking mind started interfering in the process, isn't it? For example, when you sleep, suppose tonight you will be sleeping, right? So you do not worry whether gravity will be available for you tomorrow, isn't it? That is something that we don't worry about, but it is a possibility that gravity might not be there, and tomorrow you might find yourself floating in the air. So that is not letting go. But because we sleep with a lot of plans for the next day, or maybe for the next week, or maybe for the next month, so that means we are letting go. We are allowing God to take control of it, right? And as human beings, if you look at our limitations as human beings, the biggest limitation is that we do not know what the next moment will bring for us. We do not know how the next moment will unfold. So except letting go, we anyways don't have a choice. Okay, except letting go, we don't have a choice anyways. So from letting go comes the process of surrendering, right? You have let go everything. Now you surrender to the process. Let the process take me wherever it wants to take me. Okay. Nothing in this universe goes waste. Suppose you have done a mantra arduously for maybe a year, or maybe you have done 3 lakh repetitions of that mantra, but still you are not seeing results. Don't worry about that. Just surrender to it. Let the DT do whatever it wants to do. Let the DT bring you results whenever it wants to bring you results. You just accept whatever is coming. Okay. So these are the three, these are the three keywords in dealing with a Saturnian period. You accept, you let go, and you surrender. All right. Okay, so we are going to the vulture of Saturn, that means the Vahana of Saturn, right? So the vulture as the vehicle of Saturn has the obvious reference to death through the dead body on which it subsists. So we know that the vulture is a scavenger. Yes. So it always feasts on dead bodies. It survives by eating dead bodies. So the vulture or bird of prey is present as a symbol in many ancient teachings like the Zoroastrian, the Gnostic, the Egyptian, and the Vedic. Hmm. Anyways, you have to let go. There is no other option, or if you are undergoing a Mars Saturn Dasha. So, of course, the vulture finds its reference in many other cultures apart from the Vedic, right? So, in Hindu mythology, this feathered tribe of birds takes birth from the sage Kashyapa, one of the 7 progenitors of the universe. So, we are going a bit into mythology to understand the significance of the vulture, right? So, vulture, Garuda, particularly Garuda, he is the son of Kashyapa, right? So Garuda again had 40 renowned sons. So among his 40 renowned sons, Garuda is the most important. Garuda, the this feathered tribe, right? This feathered tribe of vultures takes birth from Kashyapa, and amongst those feathered 40 sons, Garuda is the most important. So Garuda became the vehicle of Vishnu, the preserver of the universe. This is well known. So Garuda is an elder brother of Aruna, the charioteer of the sun, and in some legends, Aruna is another name of the suns. So if you look at the Surya Ashtottari Shattanamavali, the second name of the sun is Om Arunaya. The second mantra is Om Arunaya Namaha. That means the sun is referred to as Aruna. Okay, but if you take a deep dive into the mythological part of it, you'll understand that Aruna is actually the name of the charioteer of the sun. But nevertheless, in some legends, Aruna is regarded as the sun himself. Okay. So the tribe of vultures has a close connection with the sun. The 2 sons of Garuda, Jatayu and Sampati, are renowned for trying to fly up to the sun. Okay, so Garuda had 2 sons, Jatayu and Sampati, and they were famous for trying to reach the solar deity. Jatayu, we know, got his wings cut by Ravana and fell down to earth when Rama and Lakshmana met him on their search for Sita. They learned from Jatayu about his fight with Ravana to free Sita, and finally they did his last rites as he died. So this is a common story from the Ramayana. So speaking of himself to Rama, Jatayu says, "It is 6,000 years, O king, since I was born," after which, turning his back to the sun, he dies. So this reference is mainly from the Valmiki Ramayana, not from the Tulsidas Ramayana. Okay, you can actually find the story there. The various allegories about the vulture make him the emblem of the great cycle, the Mahakalpa, co-eternal with Vishnu, one with time and the sun. So this makes the vulture, very, very important, a very, very important iconograph in the Hindu mythology. So the vulture as the vehicle of Saturn alludes to the eternal that vulture symbolizes. So the vulture actually represents the ending and beginning of the great cycle. Okay, the Mahakalpa, right? So whoever has done the Panchanga class must be understanding the reference to Mahakalpa. Okay, so if you have not understood, then maybe you should go through how the Hindu calendar is made, right? So everything, the vulture, it has a reference to these great terms. So Saturn sends its 7 dark rays to these souls to draw them towards their ultimate destiny and make the unfoldment of their potential quicker and easier. It is vulture. The crow is a common misconception. Okay, it is vulture. That is the reason why I've put so many details regarding the vulture. Why is it a vulture and not a crow? Okay. So Saturn sends its 7 dark rays. So we had discussed about the 7 rays of the sun. Now Saturn, we had also discussed that Saturn makes those rays dark. Okay, being the son of the sun, he also emits those 7 rays, but those 7 rays are darker than the rays of the sun. So Saturn sends his 7 dark rays to the souls to draw them toward their ultimate destiny and make the unfoldment of their potential quicker and easier. So as we know, Saturn is a very spiritualizing planet, right? He is ultimately concerned with the, with the unfolding of our realities. So in this exercise, Saturn requires the assistance of time. Saturn can wait indefinitely if it is required for the end in view. So Saturn has infinite patience. And for that, for unfolding the true nature of the individual, Saturn takes the assistance of Kala, time. Okay. So Saturn is not impatient, it can wait indefinitely. Okay. So we have seen this, prominently in Hindu mythology. If you look at the story of Sati and Shiva, what happened? Sati was in love with Shiva, but she was not completely matured to be Shiva's wife. So what happened? She jumped into the fire and she committed suicide. And then Shiva had to wait indefinitely so that Sati could be again reborn as Parvati, again go through a lot of spiritual cleansing, and finally be united with him as his wife. So that is the amount of patience that Saturn demands from you. Whether you have it in you, we do not know. You would know it better. Okay. So to the outer vision, vultures are birds that eat dead bodies and reduce them to nothing. So we all know vultures are scavengers, right? So to the inner vision, they represent duration, time, and the great cycle during which the material sheets of the person are periodically born and destroyed until they are able to merge back into the perpetual motion. So spiritually, vultures represent the great cycle. Okay, so where there is a constant birth and death process, and this constant birth and death process is actually essential because it destroys the material sheets of the person. That means all the karmic bonds are systematically destroyed and cleansed, and then the person is born again. So Madame H.P. Blavatsky, we have all studied about her in school from the Theosophical Society of India, states that Garuda, the king of the feathered tribe, subsequently descended from and is off stock with the reptiles, the Nagas, who subsequently became their mortal enemies. So what Blavatsky claims that the Garuda and the Nagas, they have the same origin. Okay, and that is true. Why? Because Kashyapa, Rishi Kashyapa, he is said to be the father of everything that is born under the sun. Okay, Kashyapa is the father of everything. That is the reason if someone does not know their Gotra, right, they are advised to say that they belong to the Kashyap Gotra. Okay, that is the reason why it happens, because most of the people would be unaware of their Gotra. So in that case, if someone is unaware of his or her Gotra, it is advised that you say it is Kashyap Gotra, and it is accepted in all pujas. Okay. So in the course of evolution, birds which evolved from reptiles eventually turned on those they issued from in order to devour them, perhaps prompted by natural law in order to make room for other and more perfect species. So in the course of evolution, what happened is that, as I said, what Blavatsky claims that the eagles and the snakes, they originated from the same source. So these snakes, they evolved into birds, right? The birds which evolved from reptiles, they eventually started eating those reptiles so as to make room for other and more perfect species. So this relationship between vultures and serpents is described in various myths. Legends state that Vinata, wife of sage Kashyapa, and from whom Garuda and Aruna were born, had a dispute with Kadru, another wife of Kashyapa and mother of Kapila, from whom the Nagas or the serpents were born. So this story is is very well documented in the Garud Puran. Okay, if you study the Garud Puran, if you come across an English translation, you will find this story. So the dispute was about the color of Uchchashravas, one of the horses of Indra. Kadru defeated Vinata, and in accordance with the conditions of the wager, made Vinata her slave. So to purchase her freedom, Garuda struggled hard against Indra and brought down the heavenly nectar Amrit, and Vinata was released. So Vinata was the mother of Garuda. Okay, and in one fight, Kadru, the other wife of Kashyapa, she defeated Vinata, and Vinata was made her slave. So to purchase her freedom, that means to grant freedom to his mother, Garuda struggled very hard against Indra, and he brought down that heavenly Amrita which Indra possessed, and he gave it to Kadru. Okay, he gave it to Kadru, who was the mother of the Nagas. Okay. So it must be remembered, however, that the nectar was taken away by Indra from the serpents in the first place, who became the enemies of Garuda. So how that, in the first place, that nectar actually reached, that nectar actually reached Amrita. Sorry, that Amrita actually reached Indra because he had stolen that from, from the Nagas. Okay. So when Kadru captured, when Kadru captured Vinata, Kadru was actually not wrong because the Amrit that actually originally belonged to the Nagas, which Indra had stolen. So Kadru, she demanded Garuda to bring that, to bring that Amrita from Indra and give it to the Nagas. Okay. So the legend further states that this mythical bird eats up the serpents who are mortally afraid of it. So this is one of the very important basis for remedies. Suppose this is something important to note, even if you are, if you're reading charts. Suppose someone has a Kala Sarpa yoga in the horoscope. Okay, that it is there, right? It is there despite the attempts by many reputed astrologers, like, I'll not take the names, but Kala Sarpa yoga is very much there. Okay, the house of the, the yoga of the serpent is very much active. Okay, people will say that, okay, this is something that people have made it up in the hope of making money. Yes, this thing has been exploited. Unfortunately, it has been exploited, but Kala Sarpa yoga is there, and it is very important that it is remedified because it can create a lot of problems in the chart. Okay, so from the last line that I've stated, the legend further states that this mythical bird eats up the serpents who are mortally afraid of it. So every time if someone as students of astrology, or if you are, if you're looking at the charts of your friends and family, if someone is suffering from Kala Sarpa, the remedy that is generally prescribed, or that should be prescribed, is the worship of Shiva at Triambakeshwar. Okay, is the worship of Shiva at Triambakeshwar. Yes, I'm coming to that, Prashantji. The worship of Shiva at Triambakeshwar is generally recommended, and that remedy starts showing effect only 1 year after that worship is complete. Okay, but in a few select cases, that remedy will not work. Okay, because we all have our, we all have our karmic cycles. So in a few select cases, that remedy will not work. In that case, what you do is, number one, the client should be advised to perform Narayana Nagabali. Okay, the client should perform Narayana Nagabali at, at Tirupati temple. Okay, at Tirupati temple. And the second remedy that can be given, suppose some client has no time to go to Tirupati, or the client does not have the resources to go to Tirupati, the most effective remedy is to advise the client to perform Garud Mudra. Okay, Garud Mudra. That should be performed for 3 times a day, 15 plus 15 plus 15. That means 3 times a day, 15 minutes each. Garud Mudra. And this is something that I have recommended personally to many clients, and this is something that many have direct benefits from it. Garud Mudra is one of the most effective remedies for Kalasarpa yoga. It's not a dosha, it's a yoga. So immortality of the physical sheath, through which the incarnating soul gains experiences and casts them aside when they are no longer necessary, would be harmful to the end sought after by Saturn. So what happens? What Saturn does is that it actually makes you aware of your ultimate or immortal nature. But what human beings do is that the mind, it gets attached to all the previous births. Okay, to all the previous things that you have accumulated, and that is the reason we keep on taking birth after birth after birth, because our desires are very difficult to be satiated. Our desires are impossible to be satiated. Okay, our desires are impossible to be satiated. So we keep on taking birth after birth. But will that fulfill the agenda of Saturn? No, because the more we take birth, the greater, the greater we are, the farther we are pushed away from the divine. Okay, and what Saturn wants us to realize our ultimate nature. Okay. So the soul encased in this sheath is always immortal and therefore not in need of the nectar. Yes, at only one time. So the soul encased in this sheath. So anyways, we know that the soul is immortal, right? What the nectar is needed for the body, not for the soul. Yes, Amrita is always for the body. It's not for the soul. The soul is anyways immortal. So the Nagas or serpents who wanted the nectar are denied it. Indra will not let them have it. So who is Indra? I had spoken this during the Panchanga class. Indra is someone who has mastered the senses. Okay, Indra is someone who has mastered the senses, and once you master the senses, what happens? You start having that perception that your 5 senses are something that are the most important for you. Okay, so the Nagas who want the nectar, they are denied by Indra, right? So the Nagas are highly evolved occult beings, but they are not gods. Of course, they are not, right? if one has studied nakshatra, you would actually understand what the Nagas represent. The Aslesha nakshatra is a is a very good starting point to understand what powers the Nagas have. Okay, hence they're gaining the everlasting bliss and immortality which the celestial nectar produces would be injurious. Why? Because if you are using occult, that means you are able to defy your destiny. Okay, you are able to defy your destiny, and how you defy it, I've mentioned in the Panchanga class, right? You defy it once you start purifying the Pancha Mahabhutas. Okay, so if you give nectar to those occult beings, what happens is that it could be injurious to the society as a whole. So, as Kadru is the mother of the serpents, who are also said to be fathered by Kashyapa, immortality to the serpents would not be helpful, would not have been helpful to the divine scheme of things. So the serpents are deceitful and treacherous and attack at unsuspected moments. So this is the main problem with Ashlesha natives, isn't it? They are deceitful, they are treacherous, they can attack at unsuspected moments. Suppose you have conducted something, you have conducted unfair things with an Ashlesha native. That native will actually remember that thing throughout his or her entire life, and then he or she can attack you at